Hey there, friends and fellow nature journalers. In this episode of the show, I talk to Bella Ostavari about nature journaling in the German language, other nature journaling tips and tricks, and how the nature journaling community can grow into other languages. So if you're interested in nature journaling in German or nature journaling in other languages, or you're at all interested in how nature journaling can grow internationally, you're going to be very interested in this episode. She also gives some of her tips about how to use maps, how to use circles in her layouts, and a lot of cool stuff about her interest in plants and many other things. So check this episode out. Don't miss the lightning round. It was really fun and really at the cutting edge of the growth of the nature journaling community internationally. Hope you enjoy it. All right, today I'm here with Isabella Ostavari. We'll call you Bella in this conversation. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure.
All right, great. Well, I'm really looking forward to talking to you, and I feel like there's going to be some subjects that I'm super interested in, but also I'm really looking forward for our audience to hear some stuff that I feel like is not really represented in the nature journaling community, and that people will get to learn some cool things. So I first found out about you on the Nature Journal Club Facebook page, and you started your own group. Is that true?
Actually, the group was started by Heidi van den Heuvel, who is also an admin of that group. And
Okay.
she noticed that I was posting my sketches with German labeling and everything. And so
Mhm.
she just contacted me and asked me if I wanted to join and if I also would like to be an admin together with her to help her out. So I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity because I've been thinking about how cool it would be to also have a nature journaling group that would be in German.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just joined her and now we're doing this together.
Cool. That is so cool. So how did you get started in nature journaling in general?
Yeah, at first I just wrote down things. I didn't draw anything, even though I already was quite okay at drawing because I liked it.
Mhm.
I was just looking for an opportunity for a way to to write down what I was looking at. I came from university and I was like, oh man, now I'm out of university and I see so many things. And even when we're having field trips, I feel it's so fleeting and you write the protocols, but there's still so many things that you cannot grasp or you just forget about them, even if you wrote them down. And so I started keeping that journal, but it was not very intricate. It was not very intricate. I just wrote down things. And
Yeah.
then I started looking for like how to draw plants or something like that, or how to keep a notebook like that. And
Mhm.
eventually I found one of Jack's videos, how to keep a nature journal. I didn't look
Cool.
at it for a long time because it was like 2.5 hours or so, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh boy, that's a really long video.
Uh-huh.
But eventually I looked at it and I was like, oh my god, it's so awesome. And I think it's the best introduction to nature journaling one can have, to watch that particular YouTube video by
Yeah.
Jack, because
Cool.
yeah, there's something for everyone.
That's so cool. So it sounds like you had never heard about like the idea of nature journaling, but when you saw this video, it sort of clicked for you right away.
Yes, exactly. I saw it and I knew this is what I was looking for since I started to keep the journal in writing.
Wow. So that's an interesting thing that I've noticed in some of my other conversations with people, and I wonder what you think about it. Do you think like some people they're just automatically there's something about them? Like, do you think maybe someone else or maybe you at a different stage in your life it wouldn't have clicked in the same way?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that I would have liked it like 5 years back before I started already. It's just that I didn't know anyone who was doing it, and um, well, I was studying at that time, and even at university, they don't really teach you how to keep field journals. They teach you
Mhm.
how to write protocols and how to put everything in order, and of course, the tricks of your trade.
Mhm.
But keeping a field journal is really something that nobody does much anymore. I mean, you can keep lists and everything, but also most or a lot of professors don't really like to draw, I think, and so it doesn't really get passed on to the students.
No, that's very interesting. So you've mentioned university several times. What did you study?
I did study restoration and revitalization ecology,
Uh-huh.
um, which is kind of like a landscaping major, so regional development and rural problems and how to take care of rural areas.
Hmm.
And I added a lot of natural sciences basics like soil sciences and chemistry.
Okay, cool. Well, it sounds like those subjects, it seems like a lot of times in the nature journaling community, people come either in from sort of like a natural sciences side or from an art side. How do you think that affects your nature journaling?
Um, yeah, I think I'm a lot less intimidated about not having a pretty picture because that's not what I'm going for from the beginning. Of course, I kind of like it and I want it and I strive for it, but I get the impression that other people are much more bound to that idea of having that pretty picture. And
Mhm.
also, I just write much more notes.
Mhm.
And also, of course, I look up more specific terms.
Mhm.
Like I don't think about putting my own labels on things so much, but I look it up in a book and then I use that what I found in the book. And then artistic people, they seem to be more intuitive.
Mhm.
They draw what they look at and then they put it in a really nice way, and they don't care about like labels or specific terms. They make their own kind of labeling, which is also really interesting because that helps you out if you don't have any books and you
Mhm.
create your own knowledge system.
What recommendations would you give for people who are just starting nature journaling? For anyone starting nature journaling?
Yeah, for anyone starting nature journaling, I would totally recommend to just get started with the tiniest thing and
Mhm.
not worry about what it might be. Just, um, yeah, maybe watch 10 minutes of Jack's video and get really inspired and connect to your curiosity.
Mhm.
And then you just go outside and you see something and you'll know that this is something interesting you want to look at, and just
Yeah.
go and look for that to get started.
Could you talk a little bit more about the Nature Journal Club in Germany and what that is like?
hmm So the Nature Journal Club, for the German language,
Hmm.
it's not for Germany. I'm from Austria. Heidi is from Germany, and there's
Okay.
also a person from Switzerland that was involved from the beginning.
Hmm.
And they're just all kinds of German speakers here, and there's even a person who actually moved to the US when she was a child, I think, and
Hmm.
she still knows German, and she's also in our group.
Cool.
So it's mostly connected through the language,
Hmm.
and it's really cool because it has a kind of a different vibe.
Hmm.
People are they kind of discuss more what's on the page, I think,
Hmm.
and not so much comment. They're not so People in the other nature journal group are very quick to encourage,
Hmm.
and in our group people are very quick to discuss, like, oh, this is like that, and how does it really work, and where
Hmm.
did you see that, and how did you do that, and um, like our conversations are mostly about that. And
Wow.
also people are much more focused on plants, which I really like because I really love plants a lot.
Uh-huh. Wow, that's really cool. So I wonder, why do you think the personality, let's call it, of the conversations has gone in that direction?
Um, I think it's maybe a cultural thing because people in Austria and Germany, and I think probably also in Switzerland, they are much more direct than I have noticed from conversation with people from the US.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I think that's how you get into discussions. You're like, oh, but how does it work? And you don't really need to introduce much, or people don't have so much small talk. And even it's in some other contexts, small talk is seen as a little bit annoying also. So people are like, oh, what's that? And oh, how does this work? Like straight away.
Wow. Okay, that's super interesting. How many people are in that Facebook group right now?
I think we're close to 90 members
Okay.
and growing.
Cool. And I'm gonna put the name of the group up there at the bottom for anyone that's interested. So if someone searched for that, then they would be able to find your and join your group, right?
Yeah,
Cool.
sure. That would be so cool. So, of course, anybody can join, also if you don't speak German,
Mhm.
just for participating in the discussions or for actually reading what's on the page, then it's really useful to know German.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so and there isn't there like in Switzerland, are there different forms of German as well, or certain countries where there's more than one language spoken besides German? Like in Switzerland, don't they have a different German, or how does that piece work?
Yeah, so Swiss people also speaks Schweizerdeutsch. Wait, Schweizerdeutsch,
Yeah.
and it's a form of German that, well, it actually has a little bit of its own grammar. If I listen to it, I can make out the rough topic of the conversation and follow it a little bit. But if I'm not used to it, then I really can't understand so much.
Hmm.
And but all of them, of course, they also speak what we call high German, and
Okay.
they know it from when they're little kids. And also, of course, all the media is not only from Switzerland but also from Germany and Austria.
Hmm.
So it's really easy to communicate. There's really no difference. And I think also in regard to nature journaling, they write down all their notes in high German and not in Schweizerdeutsch.
Okay, cool. Well, that's such an important distinction because I think a lot of times when we talk about language in the modern world, we conflate spoken language and written language and assume that they're always the same. But um, that's a really interesting point. Um, let's see.
And
So,
also,
yeah.
also in Switzerland, there's of course French-speaking parts
Right.
and
Right.
Italian-speaking parts,
Hmm.
which we probably are not so well connected to. I don't know yet, but there are probably some people in those parts that have German only as a second language.
Right.
And I noticed that the language is really, it can be a really big barrier. Like there's some people who are also in the Nature Journal Club, but I noticed that people who have English as their first language are or seem to be much more active. Of course, that might be because of other things, but I
Mhm.
can imagine that someone feels better talking about the topic and presenting themselves in their mother tongue.
Mhm. Yeah, I am so grateful to be talking with you about this because this is something at the last nature journaling conference. It came up a little bit, and I think that it's something that I am really curious about, and I think is sort of a blind spot right now because the Nature Journaling Club on Facebook, the main one that John Muir Laws started some years ago. It started really in the San Francisco Bay Area in California in the US and is very Anglo-centric in terms of language. And I think that our country in general, the USA, is a very monolingual country, even though it's a diverse country in a lot of ways. I think that our nature journaling population is very centered in English, and that I would guess that many of those people don't speak any other languages. And I think that a lot of times, when a new like nature journaling is new in many ways, even though we're using things that have been used for a long time. The name and the concept uh, that we're going with now is kind of new, and with those things, a lot of times there's like these new terms. So one thing I've been really curious about, and I can't wait to ask you, is how do you translate things? Like for example, like how do you translate things, and then at what point do you start creating your own language? And maybe we can get into some examples of that in a moment. But just starting, for example, with the word the term nature journaling, which is already weird in English because we're turning a noun into a verb. So how have you gone about? Let's just talk about that word in particular. Like, how did you come to an idea of like what would be the best way in German to capture the name of what we're doing?
I think that really depends on how you frame yourself, because the thing is that on top of not many people knowing nature journaling, or not on top, but opposed to not many people knowing nature journaling as a thing, many people define themselves as botanical artists or
Right.
as botanical something, and they have a term for themselves, like this term is occupied by them.
Hmm.
So they might not define themselves as nature journalists, but I
Hmm.
can see many entries from other people who are mostly doing botany art, and they just look like nature journals, like they're the
Right.
plants and they have everything like
Yeah.
little notes jotted down and everything. um, yeah, so that's one thing about the terms, and I just myself I translated straight away into nature diary, which is easier to pronounce because a nature journal would be something like a nature diary.
Hmm.
And then of course the name of our group, Das Naturskizzenbuch, is like nature sketchbook,
Hmm.
and there's really no good verb for anything like that.
Hmm. So you can in so the name of your group is that's a noun then, right?
Yes, that's a
Okay.
noun.
And can you in German is it easy to turn nouns into verbs?
Yeah, usually it is. German is a very flexible language. It's very easy to string different nouns together and make an entirely new word, or to make nouns into verbs and other way around. But there's just some instances, like with nature journaling, where it's really hard to make it work.
So like the name of your group is Das Naturskizzenbuch. How would I
Yes.
say it? And then is there a way you could just say I am Naturskizzenbuching or like to turn that into like an action, or like if you told some other people in your group like I'm gonna go do this activity, what would you say?
You would just say I'm going nature drawing or something like that.
Got it.
It's really
Okay.
hard to translate journaling into anything.
Yeah, yeah. I've noticed that too. So I speak Spanish and English, and I helped teach a nature journaling workshop in Spanish, and I spent a while. There are multiple Spanish speakers in the Nature Journal Club Facebook group, the English one. And I asked a bunch of them what they were doing, what terms they were using, and I helped lead this workshop here in California, and it was the first one. I couldn't believe it, but as far as I could find, it was the very first one that's ever been taught in Spanish in the entire US. And it was interesting to try to come up with different ways to translate or create new expressions for some of the nature journaling terms. And just starting with the name of nature journaling itself was like the first difficult piece. So I'm curious, how do you think like going forward, how is your group, do you see like your group creating new language as you go forward, creating new terms and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we'll come up with our own terms as the group goes on.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure that there are already some terms that are being used that I don't even know of.
Mhm.
But what's really also very important to us, since a lot of people seem to like plants in our group, is that if we want to discuss something about botany, and I'm also, since I'm really deep into that topic, that special terms are really important for me. And I didn't even start looking for English botany terms to post my images in the Nature Journal group in English one, because it's just so hard to handle the German vocabulary all by itself, because there's so many terms and they're so specific that I didn't bother to translate that into English, and so we don't need to translate it back into German either. So
Mhm.
that works out pretty nicely. We just do our thing. And also in terms of other things, the terms have already been developed.
Mhm.
Like lots of the drawing techniques that Jack is showing
Mhm.
have been in some or another way been taught by other persons in German also.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of framing it in the context of nature journaling. But you can watch something and you're like, oh, I could use it for nature journaling, even if you saw it from someone drawing like a church or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I mean, a lot of times, people point out, I can't remember I don't think it was you, but someone posted a Nature Journal page recently, and it was like that thing that Alexander von Humboldt invented with the showing of like a mountain, and it's showing at the as the elevation changes, the plant communities change in an analogous way to how they change by latitude on the
Oh yeah,
planet.
that was one of mine.
That was yours. Okay, yeah. And that was something, that concept, I mean, that scientific concept or biogeographic concept, Alexander von Humboldt came up with, but he was also the first person to diagram it in that way. So a lot of times when I am trying to show that people have been doing nature journaling for a long time, he's one of the people that I mentioned. So what other, and another name that came up, and whose work I love, and I have like a book of his. But I was doing a search for, I was trying to do searches for nature in English, which is obviously kind of funny, but just to see what I could find, like nature journaling in German, German language nature journaling. I tried doing all these different searches, and like Ernst Haeckel's book kept coming up because he has the like Kunstformen in nature. What are that book?
I know which one you mean, Kunstformen der Natur or something like that.
Yeah,
He has like
exactly.
this one book where there's lots of plankton, and he also has worked, I think, 20 years on jellyfish, and he was one of the first people to study jellyfish at all. There's actually a really interesting story to that, which JP
Oh,
Panther posted some time ago,
oh,
like
okay.
how Ernst Haeckel's misery turned into journaling jellyfish or something like that.
Oh, that's
Because he got
cool.
started because he was really very, very sad about the death of his loved one. And I don't
Oh,
know, he just started drawing jellyfish.
okay. Cool. Yeah, so those are some like people from a long time ago that I can think of. Who are some other German language nature artists or nature journalers that you can think of? You mentioned Heidi, I believe is the collaborator that you had in the German language nature journaling group. Who are
Yeah,
some of the
she's the
other?
founder of that group, and
Okay,
we're doing the admin together.
great. So, who are some other German language nature journalers or like instructors like that people should know about?
Well, going back to like starting from the old ones that people should really know about, there's of course Jakob Sturm.
Okay.
He kind of laid the foundation for drawing plants, and I've seen so many of his illustrations, and it's really interesting to see how he has such a different style from modern botanical artists.
Ooh, cool.
And there are so many. I would have to look it up if you want to. Yeah, and then there's also Margareta Pertl. She frames herself as a botanical artist, but I think everyone who's doing botanical art is also kind of a nature journaler.
Mhm.
And she has amazing aquarelle paintings of plants. She's specialized in plants. And then there's of course, I don't know her first name, but her last name is Schoberberger. She's very famous also for her aquarelles, and she's also doing animals. Then,
Mhm.
of course, there's also Szabolcs Kokai. He's, I think, from Hungary, and
Mhm.
he's specialized on animals. He does all kinds, like birds and mammals and reptiles, everything.
Cool.
And yeah, I'll put a list together for you, and then you can research them. But for anyone out there who wants to look at botanical illustrations,
Mhm.
you should really check out the Biodiversity Heritage Library if you
Mhm.
don't know that one already, because it has so many books and so many illustrations from the past 200 years in a database. The best thing is to go at their Flickr account and check out their albums.
Oh, wow, that sounds great. That would be a really good thing for a lot of people are nature journaling from home right now, so that would be a really good
Yeah,
resource.
and they also have albums from like collections from the US and collections from India and collections from Europe. So many. It's a bit hard to look for stuff, but it's
Mhm.
such a wealth of material. It's amazing.
Cool, cool. So another question that I have is, what your group has been just online, right? And it's connecting people from a lot of different countries. Are there plans to do like actual field trips, or are there any groups in some of the German language speaking countries who are actually meeting in person and doing field trips?
A lot of us are motivated to do field trips in the future, but right
Mhm.
at the moment, we're just spread too thinly to meet up
Mhm.
in person.
Hmm. Cool. That makes sense. And I think are there in some of the German speaking countries, I feel like urban sketching is also more of a like a developed hobby already. Is that true?
I don't really know about that. I don't
Okay.
do urban sketching, so I really don't know anything about it.
Okay.
But there are lots of like sketching groups in urban areas. There's like a I don't know, like there's just it's called Sketch Group Vienna, and they just draw people. So
Right.
that's really popular also. And I think there's several ones in Vienna, and of course there are lots of courses in person or online that you can book. There's such a wealth of material, it's incredible. But what I feel is lacking is actually to have someone to meet up with who actually does nature journaling and not some other kind of drawing, because
Mm.
it's very special. And also I feel if you want to improve your nature journaling or also explore a nature topic, then you really need someone who understands your viewpoint and how you look at things and why you approach it that way. And I think someone who usually draws people or buildings and is not necessarily so much interested in nature would not quite understand in the same way as I've been like, oh, okay, so you're drawing that person in a slightly different pose now.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like you are that person. Are you interested in doing something and that kind of teaching in the future?
Well, I'm not so interested in teaching myself because at my actual job, I'm having a lot of workshops to handle throughout the year. And I'd
Yeah.
rather attend a workshop and learn something myself and, just talk to people on a one-on-one basis. And
Yeah.
if they ask for it, exchange ideas and give them some tips. If you're like, hey, how did you do that? Then of course I'll tell them, but I don't think I would want to teach a workshop. At
Okay.
least not now.
So
Maybe in 10 years. I don't know.
Okay, so who is the person who's gonna? It sounds like there's an open niche for someone to be teaching nature journaling in German, in the field in German-speaking countries. Do you think that's true?
Oh, that's absolutely true. I think
Mhm.
people would love to go something that is actually called nature journaling
Mhm.
and to have some kind of workshop or whatever.
Mhm. Cool. Well,
Also, I can see it. Also, I can see it in the topics that are discussed. There's like constantly like, oh, how do you do this technique and which pen do you use for that?
yeah.
So I think there would be a need for that.
Yeah, I know there's another pretty popular YouTuber, Julia Bausenhart, and she has videos in English. I think she is in Germany. Yeah, she is definitely based in Germany. I forget what town, but she teaches a lot online. And she teaches a lot of different types of nature art, but she does have some videos about nature journaling. And other than that, though, and she doesn't have videos in German, I don't think. Are there any resources that you know of, like videos that people are teaching nature journaling in German?
Well, there's Gesche Sanden. She has another group which is called Malende Naturforscherinnen.
Hmm.
And it seems she's also specialized on plants, and she also does watercolor tutorials, and she has online courses. And I think usually she also has in person courses.
Hmm. And she based in Germany?
Yeah, I think she's from Germany.
Okay, cool. All right, well, we'll have to put those resources down below for people. Um,
And
yeah.
after I saw Jack's video 2 years ago, I was so motivated, I translated it into German.
Whoa,
So you can now watch it subtitled in German.
that's so cool. Nice. Are some of his other books available in German? Do you know?
No, none of his books. I don't think so. Also, that would be too much to translate.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if anybody is motivated to translate his other videos into German, then I would totally open for it. I would be totally open for it.
Mhm.
I started translating another video, but then I kind of started on my new job, and a lot of other things came along. But I could totally take that up again because I think the way he puts things in the context of nature journaling, you really would be reinventing the wheel if you tried to say it any other way.
I know that's one thing that I noticed when trying to teach nature journaling in Spanish, and that's one thing I'm curious about. Because I want to get like your perspective on it because how do you think do you think it's possible for nature journaling to grow as like a cohesive movement while while different languages develop their own terminology? Like, is there a way to have like the diversity of the languages and also maintain sort of like a global cohesiveness or togetherness?
Yeah, I think I can answer that with yes. I can already see it in the different groups that are there. So there are people in Gesche Santens group and there are people in Naturskizzenbuch, and
Hmm.
they're also posting at the same time in Jack's group. And
Hmm.
some people even do their journal entries in English, so it's easier for people in Jack's group to understand them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I see that there is some kind of exchange there also, but of course what's a bit of a pity is that it's always kind of one way, and of course it
Right.
kind of has to be because it doesn't make no sense to
Mhm.
post where you really don't understand the language at all. But I
Mhm.
think there's this potential for connectiveness. It's already there.
Okay, that's super cool. So see, I think this is the kind of stuff that a lot of is a blind spot for a lot of people who are English speakers, and because English tends to be like this language that dominates a lot of things, and then the vocabulary just gets the vocabulary that was developed in English, like around computers, then it is kind of like steamrolls over the other languages and they just take the English words or have no choice maybe to use those English words. And so that's one thing that I'm like really curious about. Like, so you said that it's only a one way, it's only like a one way sharing right now. Like, how do you think we can encourage a more like diverse language? Because I'm sure there's so many ways that like English speaking nature journalers can also benefit from other languages and like some of the like ideas that are generated in other languages and terms and stuff like that. So like can you think of any ways like the nature journaling community as a whole, or especially like the English speaking nature journaling community, can help like promote or help this like diversity?
Um, I think one big thing for diversity and for encouraging that exchange would be to have people who understand English very easily and who are very engaged in the nature journaling groups of other languages to work as some kind of a, like, not straight away translator, but as a point for cohesion. So those
Mhm.
people could maybe, they see a new concept emerging in their native group, and they can then say like, oh, this is such a great concept, why don't we tell other people about this concept? And
Mhm.
so that way, things that are generated in one language can flow into another.
Mhm.
um, I don't see a way for like English, like from the English group to like get more into the other language groups, because of course you can look at the nature journal entries there, which is probably a good thing because then you see what's going on. But
Mhm.
also in terms of terminology, I think it's not so easy to get that other way around exchange because there are just so many languages. And
Yeah.
also the German group is not really connected to a Spanish group, and also we're not connected to a Swedish group because,
Mhm.
well, we most of us don't speak Swedish.
Yeah.
So I think having an English group that is really strong already is a point of cohesion because
Okay.
there most people can meet up because a lot of people understand at least some English.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that's so interesting. Wow. Okay, that's such a cool topic. I feel like that's something I'm gonna need to think about that stuff a lot more. But to change subject, are you ready for the lightning round? All right. Lightning round. If you were stuck on a deserted tropical island, what five nature journaling art supplies would you take with you?
Okay, I would take my sketchbook,
Hmm.
a pen or pencil. I don't know, the one with graphite. I don't know the difference.
Pencil, yeah.
Yeah, the pencil. And I would probably take like a flora, a book where all the plants of an island or of an area are listed.
Okay.
Um, I would take my headline marker,
Hmm.
um, one fine liner, a very thin one for the details, my little pocket microscope.
We're already at five.
No, okay, I give back the fine liner.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Your sketchbook, pencil, a flora book of the area, so you can identify the plants. And then your first. What was your first pen that you mentioned? The ink
My
pen.
headline pen, it's very bright and green.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then the pocket microscope. What pocket microscope do you use?
I'm using the Carson mini microscope. It's actually not really a microscope, but a really
Mhm.
strong, um, is it called looking glass?
Yeah, like a looking glass. Yeah.
Yeah, a really
Mhm.
strong looking glass, and it has a light at the bottom, which is really
Oh
nice.
yeah.
So you don't have to turn every which way to get a good angle on something really
Okay.
small that you want to see.
Yeah, I'll ask you more about that one later because that sounds really cool. Okay, so this is if which would you rather have the brain of for nature journaling? A 9-year-old or a 99-year-old?
Oh God, that's a hard question. Like, if I have the brain of a 90-year-old, wouldn't I also be very often too tired to do nature journaling?
Yeah. Well, just choose one.
um, but I think I'd rather have the 90-year-old person because I really like the determination that some old people have. Like
Yeah.
there's something really hard or tiring or difficult, but they just keep grinding at it. And I
Okay.
think that's more my style of nature journaling.
Okay, cool. Would you rather go nature journaling in Antarctica or the Amazon?
Definitely the Amazon.
Okay, well, you like plants, so Antarctica might be, I mean, the diversity is probably pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need a lot of diversity to be occupied for a really long time, especially if you start looking at ever smaller and smaller units of a plant. And
Yeah.
also, Antarctica is going to be pretty interesting the next years because there are already plants starting to colonize the
Mm,
fringes of it.
yeah,
But I don't really like the cold. I have such a hard time in the cold.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay.
Amazon it is.
All right. Do you rather use watercolor or colored pencil?
Definitely watercolor.
Okay.
I actually started out with pencil, and I was like, oh, it takes such a long time to fill in a color. And I started with watercolor, and I was like, oh God, I can't get any precision.
Uh-huh.
And then I took a course with Alois Wilfling, who is, by the way, a really great plant illustrator,
Oh.
amazing work. And he showed me the dry brush technique, and ever since then, I never want to go back to watercolor, to pencils.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, same feeling with me. What is your favorite sketchbook that you use?
Um, Actually, I just have one.
Hmm.
I started it 2.5 years ago, and it's still not full yet. And
Hmm.
it's just my favorite one because that's the one I have.
What brand or type is it?
It's not really a brand. It's like a no-name brand from a
Okay.
local drugstore chain, and they always have this one. And I like it because it's A4, and you can get a lot of information on it. It's
Mhm.
annoying because it's A4 because it's big to carry around, but
Mhm.
and also it is it has like little crosses, the check marks, or what it's called.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and
a grid.
yeah, it has a grid.
Hmm.
And if I don't have a grid, my writing goes everywhere.
Hmm.
It's like terrible.
Yeah.
So I really need that grid.
Okay, cool. And then last question for the lightning round is if you could go nature journaling with a historical person, who would you nature journal with?
Ah, that's so hard. I don't know. Maybe one of the botanical artists, maybe with Jakob Sturm. And no, wait. I think I would go journaling with Humboldt.
Okay, nice.
Or maybe with Alexander Kropotkin, because he is the guy who mapped the Ural Mountains with just
Oh,
a pressure meter, and he was like
wow.
going around and measuring the pressure, and he's like, no, those mountains are actually not shaped this way, they actually go another way. And yeah,
Wow, wow.
so that's really such a great achievement to figure that
Yeah,
out.
cool. Well, great job in the lightning round. You did really well. So it sounds like you're interested in maps, huh? Do you use maps a lot in your nature journals?
I wouldn't say a lot, but they are a principal component because they show some things that you wouldn't be able to show otherwise, like the chorology of a plant, like where it grows in the world and where it doesn't grow.
Yeah.
There's really no other way to put that. You know, you can write it down, but then in the end, it wouldn't take away much from it.
Hmm.
And also, I use it to show the location in Austria where I have been, and yeah, just visibly like visually showing the location you're at. It's just so useful for a lot of stuff.
Great. I also noticed that you use circles a lot on your pages, and that's something that I'm really interested in page layouts. And a lot of times, people like JP has mentioned how using circles sometimes can be, it's a challenging, like from a design perspective, a circle is a challenging shape to use, but you seem like you use them with a lot of good results in your journal pages. Can you talk about how you use circles at all?
Yeah, I use circles to point out the details. I don't know how I got started with it, but now I use it mostly because it helps me avoid thinking about layout. So I start somewhere with something, and then I just put a circle around it, and then if it's the same topic, like it's a detail, I just
Mhm.
put other circles around it and join it to show that it's kind of connected together.
Right.
And yeah, and if it's not connected together, then of course the circles are separated.
Got it. And do you use a tool for making your circles?
Yes, I use a tool that is like a stencil that was made for, I think it's called quilting. It's a paper art where
Hmm.
you cut little paper strips and then you bend them into circles. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so there are obviously tools for that, and I found that.
So
But otherwise,
it's like a plastic sheet with little circles of different sizes.
yeah, yeah. But
Okay.
otherwise, it's really hard to find circle stencils, and I tried something like a circle, what do you call those things that you use in geometry that go like
Compass.
that for what?
Compass. Compass.
Compass? That
Compass.
isn't that for direction?
Yeah, it's the same for
Oh,
some,
it's the
it's the
same.
same word, yeah.
Yeah. I used a compass also that was like very reduced to
Mhm.
just like a metal bar with holes in it.
Yeah.
But if you have a very small wave in your journal from whatever,
Yeah.
then it doesn't work anymore. So I don't use that anymore. And I started with the stencils.
Okay, cool. That's going to be useful for a lot of people. Great. So I want to go into a couple of sort of final questions here. Um, let's see. Do you think that nature journaling can make the world a better place?
I don't know. That's so hard to answer, especially since a better place means a lot of different things to everyone. Like you can ask 10
Mhm.
people and you'll have
Yeah,
10 opinions on that.
yeah,
I
yeah, very
definitely think
wise.
it will make it more enjoyable for the people who live in the world. So everyone who does it will probably benefit from it.
Okay, good answer. Very philosophically wise answer there. Um, let's see. So one thing that I'm also curious about is I'm not sure how your group demographic is, but there's not very many young people in the nature journaling community over here in California and most of the U.S. Have you experienced that in your German language nature journaling group? Like, what is your demographic like?
Whew, I don't really know. We didn't do a census yet.
Hmm.
I am 29, so I'm also not like 18-year-old anymore, which is probably what most people would consider really young.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have to say, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, like over here, a lot of I would say the majority of the people in our nature journaling group are over 60. So
Oh,
you would be very young. I mean, there's a few teenagers as well, but for the most part, it's over 60, and also it's mostly women too, which is an
um,
interesting thing.
yeah, also we're mostly women.
Mhm,
And I also know, and even if we weren't mostly women, most of the posts are from women.
mhm,
So I can confirm that. And but I think our demographic is not that old. I think most people are probably somewhere between their late 20s and maybe their 50s. Of course, there are also people in their 60s and older,
mhm.
but I don't think that they're the main group. And
Okay.
also, most botanical artists are also not that young either. So that's really interesting.
Mhm. Okay, cool. What kinds of last words of encouragement would you give for anyone who is not really posting very much or not getting motivated to nature journal on their own, but they're just like looking because on social media it's really easy to just look at other people's nature journaling. Do you have any encouragement for people to try nature journaling more?
Um, I think the biggest barrier for most people is being embarrassed and putting too much pressure on themselves. And I can just recommend to anyone to develop the habit of um, how I have to think about that for a minute. It's a bit
Mhm.
hard to express, but to develop the habit of getting high on that scary thing that you're doing when you're doing nature
Yeah,
journaling.
yeah.
Like, you can go on a roller coaster. And I know a lot of people like that because otherwise amusement parks really wouldn't work. So why not take that scary feeling when you're journaling or that pressure you put on yourself, like
Yeah,
that roller coaster feeling? So it's not
yeah,
really fear, or actually it's fear, but it's also enjoyable because it's
yeah,
exciting.
yeah, totally. So maybe reframing the feeling of fear as excitement instead of fear.
Yes, exactly. Or maybe
Cool.
it even is fear, but maybe try to enjoy it.
Hmm.
Take it like a horror movie.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. Thank you for all of that. And if people want to find out more about what you're doing, do you have like any websites or anything that you want to share, or any places that people can look at to see more of what you're doing?
Yeah, so I have a blog which is called beobachterin.com, and it's in German. And sometimes when I do interviews with international people, like there is a really cool interview with a restoration ecologist from Kenya. This is, of course, also posted in English in the original language it was taken. And
Hmm.
then there's our Facebook group, Das Naturskizzenbuch. And
Hmm.
of course, you can also contact me personally on my Facebook profile where I'm called Bella Perennis.
Cool. And I think I'll have your name, your Facebook name down below. Well, it's been so good talking to you, and I'm really excited about how nature journaling is spreading into other languages and developing on its own in other languages. So thank you for bringing so much insight into that for everybody watching.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Great. Bye.
Bye.